Hello again, all my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach. Welcome back to my crochet channel. Now, we completed step 1 this was our 2024 crochet along that we made all the squares for. And we finished step 1 in putting them all together with this fun ruffly bumpily trim. Now, if you want the link for step 1, I have put that down in the notes underneath this video so you can go and look at step 1. And in step 1, we put all the squares together. And what I did is I threw all the squares in a container and just grabbed them out randomly, and we made rows of 6 squares, and there'll be 5 rows of 6 squares. And then we put them all together, and I show you how to do that in that first video, step 1. Today we're going to do step 2. And what we're going to do on step 2 is I'm going to show you how to add a trim around the edge. It can be a little bit tricky because, again, we won't have the same amount of stitches on each of our squares, and then we have this additional portion between each of our squares that we have to work in. All right, so I'm going to show you what I call the basic trim around, which is 2 rows, and we'll talk about that. And then on step 3, we're going to finish off with the fancy trim. All right, I am really loving how this blanket is stitching up and how it's turning out. Okay, now the other thing I want to tell you is if you've gone and looked at step 1 and you just don't care for this way we put our squares together, you can use any way you want to put your squares together in a blanket. And you know what else? You don't have to make a blanket. You can make some bags, you can make a hat, you can make a scarf, you can make a pillow, whatever you want to do with all of these squares. Because remember, there's 12 squares, 1 for each month, and we did 2 of the squares. There's 2 right here of the same square. And then we also did an additional 6 with the color we're using for our trim. And so we have 30 squares. Well, if you want a much bigger blanket, make as many squares as you want to. And you don't have to use these squares either. You can use any 6-inch squares for this project. So it's lots of fun. If you made up a bunch of extra squares you have laying around, you can put them all together and make this wonderful blanket. It's easy, it's fun, and it gets rid of a lot of our leftover yarns. All right, let's get started on step 2. Oh, and remember, as always, I'll put that link down in the notes underneath this video that has lots of pictures and information. All right, so we're getting ready to do step 2, which is the basic trim around our blanket. And again, we're using this Scramble, but you can use any medium weight number 4 yarn. The main thing I just want to remind you is that whatever fiber of yarn you used, you need to join them and do the trims in a similar, or I should say the same fiber. Because remember, if you did all your squares in wool and then you do your trim and you're putting them together in a different fiber, wool and acrylic, wool and cotton, cotton and acrylic, they don't all wash up the same. And especially if you're using anything with wool in it, because remember, wool felts. So keep that in mind when you're picking your yarn for joining your squares, which we've already done, of course, and also for the trim. And again, I ordered this from Herrschners, SUNDANCE Scramble, and the color is rainbow. And I really liked it because, like I said in the first video, it's based on like this creamy white color, kind of an off-white or an ivory. And then it has all these spots of bright colors, and it just stitches up beautifully, I think, for this blanket. We are using our H hook again, which is a 5mm, and all you need after that is your scissors and a needle for weaving in those ends. So after you've taken a few minutes and gotten all your ends weaved in, which I missed some, I've got a few I've got to go back that I missed. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to start in one of the corners. It doesn't matter which one. And you're going to go in that chain 1 space and pull in your yarn, or join in your yarn. And all we're going to do on this row first is we're going to evenly single crochet around to give us a nice base stitch. Okay, now it can be a little difficult because you're working in your lap, things move around, and I'm trying to get situated here so it will sit in my lap and also across my table. Alrighty, I think I'm ready to go. So we've joined to our chain one space, and now we're going to go in that first single crochet, and we're just going to evenly single crochet across each of the squares. And one thing you need to remember is all your squares may not have the same amount of single crochets, and that's okay. It doesn't really matter. We don't need an exact or a set amount. We're just going to stitch a nice even row of single crochets, and we'll stitch one single crochet in each of the single crochets of our squares. And then when we get to this portion, I'm going to show you what to do. Almost there. And this row is important because it's going to help us with the shaping of our, not our squares, but our blanket as well. All right, so you're going to single crochet. Looks like I need one more right there. All right, and then you'll single crochet in that space, and it's going to be the chain one space where we joined with our joining that we did. Okay, so we're going to single crochet there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to single crochet on the side of that first single crochet stitch, and then we'll go to the next single crochet stitch and single crochet. Okay, and so then we'll single crochet in that chain one space. All right, so when we get to this portion, we've single crocheted across our square, and then we'll single crochet in the side of the single crochets of this one and the single crochet of this one, because remember when we started we stitched 2 single crochets in that chain one space, and then we came over here and stitched 2 single crochets in that chain one space. Okay, and then we'll stitch a single crochet right in that same chain one space, and this is going to help this lay straighter, and that will give us a nice foundation in order to make it all lay flat and lay pretty. Okay, so then we'll just go to the next square and stitch across. And again, don't panic if you have more single crochet stitches on your different squares, because each square is different, and so some will have a few more and some will have a few less, and it's okay. The main thing is that it looks nice and tidy. And one thing I would suggest is, as we're doing this trim and you're stitching here in these squares, tighten your gauge up just a little bit, and that will help with the shaping of your blanket. And you'll notice I'm sort of pulling a little with my finger, trying to tighten my gauge up a little bit. I do tend to be a loose stitcher, and so I'm trying to tighten it up just a smidge. You don't want to tighten it up so much you get a line in your finger, okay? Just tighten it up just a little bit as you're going across, and that's going to help the blanket lay neater. All right, so again, we're at where we made our join. So I'm going to single crochet in that chain one space. I'm going to single crochet in that first single crochet of the join. Then I'll single crochet in the next one, and then single crochet in that chain one space. And that is what's going to help it lay nice and pretty. Okay, and this is going to take a little while. It's a lot of crochet stitches, but we need those single crochets in order to make a nice solid foundation for the rest of our blanket. All right, and see how that starts to lay really pretty across there? Okay, so we're going to do this all the way across until we reach that first, or I should say that last, chain one space on our blanket. So I have single crocheted all the way across the first 6 squares, and that brings me to the corner. And when you get to the corner, in that chain one space, you want to stitch a single crochet, chain one, and single crochet. All right, and that will get us nicely around that corner, and then we'll just do exactly what we've been doing and stitch one single crochet in each of those single crochets until we get to that portion where it was joined together. And I need to take a minute and weave this end in, but we're going to do the same thing all the way down the side that we've been doing over here, which is single crochet in each of the single crochets, and then remembering just how we single crocheted in these stitches. We single crocheted in the chain one space, then we single crocheted in this single crochet and this one, and then we placed a single crochet in the chain one space, and that makes a nice flat edge as we're going across in between all of our squares. All right, so I'll just continue this just as soon as I weave this end in. All right, that took a couple of minutes. I single crocheted all the way around all four sides of my blanket. And then, of course, in our corners, we did single crochet, chain one, single crochet, which I need to do real quick. And then join to my first single crochet with a slip stitch and chain 3. All right, so now we've completed row 1 of our basic trim, and we're going to do a row 2, which will set us up for our video 3, which will be our fancy trim. All right, we joined to our first single crochet and chained 3, but we actually need to chain 4 because this chain 4 counts as a double crochet, chain 1. We're going to skip the next single crochet and then double crochet in the next and chain 1. Then we'll skip the next, double crochet in the next, and chain 1. And we'll repeat this, working all the way around our blanket. And this is setting us up for our fancy trim that we're going to do for step 3. All right, and that's what we're going to do all the way around all four sides of our blanket. Now, when you get down to the corner of the 4 corners, it doesn't matter if you end on a chain 1 or if you end on a double crochet. You just go right in that corner and stitch a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. All right, and I'll show you that when I get to the first corner. Might be a couple minutes. All right, so we're working a double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, all the way across. So I have worked all the way down this side here with our double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, all the way down. And now I'm to a corner. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you're at the chain 1 or if you're at the double crochet. They're all the 4 of the corners are worked exactly the same. You just go in that chain 1 space, stitch a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. All right, and then chain 1, then you skip the next, and we just start working down the next side, doing exactly what we've been doing. Double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and you can see how that makes that corner lay nice. And it also helps set us up for what we're going to do, like I said, on step 3, which I'm calling the fancy trim. All right, so I'm just going to keep on working down this next side, and then I'll do my 4 corners the same to finish up my basic trim. All right, so I have gone around my whole blanket, stitching double crochet, chain 1, skip 1 all the way around, and then we place double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in each of the 4 corners. And now I'm going to join to the third chain of our beginning chain 4, because remember that chain 4 counted as a double crochet chain 1. There we go. All right, now I'm going to slip stitch in this chain 1 space and just make a chain 1 for now, because we're finished with what we call our basic edge or our basic trim. And now we're all set up for step number 3 for our fancy trim on Friday. And it's not a complicated trim, it's just a little bit more fancy. If you really like this and you want to just stop here, it makes a really pretty edge. I mean, I really like it. It looks nice all the way around with all those different colors. It just looks really pretty. All right, so we've completed step number 2, and then on Friday, for our Friday Fun Day, we're going to do step number 3, which is our fancy trim. And again, I am absolutely loving the way this blanket is turning out. I do. I just love it.